Agatha Raisin and the Whisper in Evesham Salon. Dark secrets are rising to the surface, and nothing in this mystery is as harmless as it first appears. Step into a night of twists, tension, and hidden truths. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? And subscribe so you never miss upcoming mysteries. Carsley woke beneath a drizzle that couldn't quite commit. It streaked Agatha Raisin's kitchen window like half-hearted tears, and she glared at it as if the weather were personally insulting. Hodge, her large tabby, sprawled on the windowsill, tail twitching with feline amusement. "Don't smirk," she told him, lighting a cigarette. "You don't have to meet anyone who calls my hair practical." The word had come from Charles Frayth the previous evening, uttered in that maddeningly offhand way of his, as though practical were a virtue. Practical. The man had a butler for his butler's butler, and the cheek to call her provincial. By 10 o'clock, she'd decided to do something bold, something metropolitan. She flicked ash into the sink, eyed herself in the mirror, and made the sort of decision that generally preceded disaster. "We're going to Evesham, Hodge," she declared, already dialing the number from a glossy advert. "Le coiffeur élégant. How hard can it be?" The salon glittered like a newly opened jewellery box. Mirrors everywhere, the smell of product and ambition thick as perfume. Evesham's ladies had turned out in force. The vicar's wife from a neighbouring parish, the mayor's secretary, and, to Agatha's irritation, Penelope Frith, that braying woman who chaired the Mercester Flower Society. A tall man with artfully tousled dark hair glided towards her. "Mrs. Raisin? Sebastian Darcy. Welcome to Le Coiffeur. You've come to the right place for transformation." Agatha gave him her best tight-lipped smile. "I only want something smart, modern, but not silly. Of course, we'll do subtle highlights to lift the face, bring out your vivacity." His vowels were London, his charm professional. Agatha settled into the chair, feeling the delicious vanity of surrendering control, until the cape was fastened too tightly. "Not too blonde," she warned. "I don't want to look like a barmaid in Bognor." Sebastian laughed indulgently. "Trust me." An hour later, Trust had turned ginger. The reflection staring back at her bore an alarming resemblance to an autumn hedge. Sebastian fluttered with apologies and mousse. Penelope Frith, waiting nearby, gave an audible snort. "Oh, Mrs. Raisin, what adventurous colour!" Agatha's cheeks flamed hotter than her hair. "It's temporary," she snapped. "Very modern in Paris." Sebastian swooped in with flutes of champagne. "A little bubbles to ease the shock. The toner will soften beautifully." She drank partly for courage. Around her, dryers whirred like gossiping bees. From behind a partition came raised voices, Sebastian's quick, silky tone and a woman's sharper reply. "You promised it was finished," the woman hissed. "Keep your voice down. We agreed. The cupboard stays locked." Agatha froze mid-sip. She glanced towards the sound. Through the gap in the curtain she saw Sebastian and his assistant, a slim blonde with anxious eyes, standing beside a small backroom door. The assistant, Lila, her badge said, looked on the verge of tears. "It isn't right," she said. "You can't keep—" But Sebastian's smile cut her off. "Enough. Go tidy the front." Agatha leaned back as Lila emerged, face blotchy, hands trembling. Their eyes met briefly, an instant of shared embarrassment. Lila hurried past with a mumbled apology. By closing time, Agatha's hair had been toned to something marginally less alarming. She stood at the counter, purse in hand, when Penelope Frith sidled up, voice dripping false sympathy. "It does take courage, doesn't it, to try something new at our age?" Agatha fixed her with a smile that would have chilled champagne. "Yes, but some of us still can." Outside, drizzle turned to honest rain. Agatha hurried to her car, annoyed with herself for caring. Vanity, she told herself, was one of life's more entertaining sins, until it made one ridiculous. She glanced once more through the salon's steamy window. Sebastian was locking the cupboard, pocketing the key with care. Lila stood behind him, arms folded, eyes flat as pond water. "Drama," Agatha muttered, starting the engine. "Always follow the drama." The next morning, Carsley was enjoying its favourite sport, other people's misfortunes. Doris Simpson arrived to clean, bringing news before she'd even set down the hoover. "They say that new salon girl's done a bunk, Mrs. Raisin. Vanished overnight. My cousin's daughter works opposite the place. Police been round already." Agatha straightened, cigarette in hand. Lila? She seemed the nervous sort. Ran off with the takings, they reckon, and that Sebastian, all fancy talk and London ways, says she robbed him blind. Nonsense, Agatha said automatically, though she wasn't sure why, perhaps because Lila hadn't looked capable of robbing a till, only of crying over it. Doris sniffed. Well, if you ask me, nothing good comes from these foreign hairdressers. My sister tried a perm in Cheltenham and looked electrocuted for a month. Agatha waved her away. Yet when Doris left, the silence pressed. Hodge yawned pointedly from his chair. Don't look at me like that, she said. Curiosity is a professional reflex. She found herself phoning Bill Wong before lunch. Agatha, he said with mild resignation, we don't even know if it's a crime. The girl might have gone to London. And left her handbag? They're saying she took money, but I'd bet my gin bottle she didn't. Let's not start betting again, Bill said patiently. You're still banned from that bingo in Mercester. That was one misunderstanding. She hesitated. There's something odd about that salon. Locked cupboards, secrets, and a man who smiles too much. Bill's sigh carried the weary affection of experience. Just don't interfere. Me? Said Agatha sweetly. He hung up before answering. By late afternoon her resolve had melted with the rain. She drove back to Evesham under a sky the colour of damp slate. The salon windows were dark. A handwritten note on the door read closed for stock-taking. Stock-taking my foot, she muttered, peering in. The chairs stood in perfect order, towels folded, mirrors gleaming, except one small thing. A handbag on the counter, half hidden under a magazine, pale pink, cheap leather. Lila's. Agatha's pulse quickened. She rapped on the glass, half hoping no one would answer. No movement inside. She tried the side alley. Bins, empty boxes, a faint smell of hairspray. The handbag must have been overlooked when the police came, she reasoned. But why leave it there, untouched? A sudden noise made her jump, a door slamming somewhere behind the salon. She caught a glimpse of movement. Sebastian, in a long coat, carrying a small parcel towards the back gate. "Mr. Darcy," she called. He turned, startled, then smiled. "Mrs. Raisin. Couldn't stay away from us, eh? We're closed today, my dear. Special delivery." "You've lost your assistant," Agatha said bluntly. "Any idea where she's gone?" "Lila?" His expression didn't flicker. "Ah, yes, a shame. She decided the country life wasn't for her. Couldn't handle the pace." "Or the cupboards," Agatha said lightly. He paused just long enough for her to notice. Then that easy charm returned. "You've such a sense of humour. Do come back tomorrow. We'll finish perfecting your colour." "We'll see," said Agatha. He disappeared round the corner, parcel under arm. Back home she poured a generous gin and tonic, the lime fizzing like her nerves. Hodge leapt onto the armchair and regarded her with the patience of one long accustomed to human folly. "Don't look so smug," she said. "I've a feeling that Salon's hiding more than bad dye jobs." The clock ticked. Rain spattered against the window. Agatha caught her reflection. Hair perfectly respectable now, though perhaps a shade too daring for Casserly. She tilted her head, half smiled at herself, and muttered, "Tomorrow we'll go back, for answers, and proper toner." Hodge stretched luxuriously and closed his eyes, unimpressed. Casserly's gossip network moved faster than broadband ever could. By breakfast the next morning, half the village already knew more about the pretty blonde from Le Coiffeur Élégant. Not just that she was missing, but that the police had been seen down by the canal. Doris Simpson arrived in a rain-spotted mac, Hoover under one arm and relish in her tone. "They're still at it, Mrs. Raisin. Police all over Evesham, down by the canal and round that fancy salon of yours. My cousin saw the van go past." Agatha, buttering toast she didn't want, looked up sharply. "So, it is about Lila?" "Course it is. They say she's in terrible trouble. Some are saying it's more than just running off with a bit from the till. Wicked, if you ask me." Agatha set down the knife. "She didn't look wicked. Frightened, yes. Foolish, probably. But not wicked." Doris sniffed. "You never can tell with that sort. All that peroxide, it seeps into the brain." Agatha lit a cigarette and blew smoke towards the Aga. "Perhaps you should put that in your memoirs, The Moral Decline of Blondes." Doris missed the sarcasm entirely. "Wouldn't sell, dear. Everyone's blonde these days." When Doris left, Agatha found herself pacing. The drizzle outside had turned persistent, the sort that flattened hedges and optimism alike. Hodge yawned from his basket, unimpressed by crime or weather. "Don't start," she said. "It's not meddling, it's concern, entirely different." But she knew it wasn't. By mid-morning she had driven to Evesham under a sky the colour of dishwater. The salon was open again, its windows fogged, hairdryers humming as if nothing had happened. Inside, Sebastian Darcy was performing Serenity. "Mrs. Raisin," he exclaimed, greeting her with the full wattage of his smile. "Back already? I was going to ring you about your toner." "Never mind the toner. I heard your assistant's done a vanishing act." A flicker, quickly masked. "Ah, poor Lila. Personal troubles, I'm afraid. Young love, bad decisions." "You're saying she ran off with someone?" "Well, she certainly didn't run off with me, though the ladies of Evesham appear disappointed." Agatha folded her arms. "And the missing money?" "A misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "I'm sure it will sort itself out." Behind him, the new girl, plump, cheerful, smelling of perm solution, whispered to a customer, who promptly lowered her voice too. Gossip bred faster than bacteria in shampoo. Agatha leaned closer. "If the police are involved, I'd rather hear it from you than from Doris Simpson's cousin's neighbour." Sebastian's charm dimmed a watt. "The police spoke to me, yes. Routine questions. Now, about that toner." "Another time," said Agatha, and swept out, aware every mirror in the place was watching her leave. The Red Lion offered its usual comfort: smoke-dark beams, a faint scent of ale, and 2 pensioners asleep by the fire. Agatha chose a corner table and dialed Bill Wong from the payphone near the bar. "You heard about the Salon girl?" she asked. "Morning to you too, Agatha." "Don't be obtuse, Bill. What do you know?" "Only that she's missing, and there's no evidence of foul play. People vanish for reasons that have nothing to do with murder." "That's what they said about my ex-husband's conscience." Bill sighed down the line. "Please don't start investigating. The chief still remembers your last helpful lead." "That was entirely accurate," said Agatha. "Just a few weeks early." "Promise me you'll leave it alone." "Of course," she said sweetly, then added, "Have they checked the canal?" He groaned. "Agatha, must dash. My lunch is arriving." She hung up before the protest could form. Mrs. Bloxby called that afternoon with scones and moral guidance. She placed the plate on Agatha's coffee table, glancing around the cottage with mild amusement. "You've been restless lately," she said gently. "It usually means trouble is about to find you." Agatha poured tea. "I merely like to stay informed. And if a young woman's missing, someone ought to care." "Caring is admirable," Mrs. Bloxby agreed, "assuming it doesn't involve interrogating strangers under hairdryers." "Honestly, you make me sound unhinged." The vicar's wife smiled serenely. "You're simply curious, but curiosity can wound as well as help." Agatha took a large bite of scone to avoid answering. The jam was too sweet, so probably was her conscience. That evening, as dusk pooled over the village, the telephone shrilled. "Agatha, darling!" Roy Silver's voice sparkled down the line like cheap champagne. "Roy," she said warily, "if this is about that PR scheme for wrinkle cream, I'm not—" No. I just heard from someone at the Courier that your little hairdresser has gone missing. You and highlights in the same story. It's destiny." "I suppose it's funny to you." "Of course it is, until it's tragic. Then it'll be a bestseller." She rolled her eyes. "Do you ever stop performing?" "Not while I have an audience, darling. Anyway, I'm popping down tomorrow. Can't have you sleuthing without supervision. You'll frighten the locals again." "The locals deserve it," she muttered, but secretly she was pleased. Roy's company meant distraction, and she hated eating alone. The next morning dawned with deceptive brightness. Agatha decided to walk to the vicarage for exercise and gossip in equal measure. She found Mrs. Bloxby trimming roses with serene concentration. "Any thoughts on missing girls?" Agatha asked. Mrs. Bloxby snipped a stem. "Only that life in small places can feel terribly large to some. Perhaps Lila simply needed to escape." "You're too kind," Agatha said. "If it were me, I'd have left a note and a forwarding address." "Would you?" Mrs. Bloxby smiled faintly. "You never truly leave a place, Agatha. You only circle back with shorter hair." Agatha frowned, unsure if she'd been gently insulted. Roy arrived in a flurry of aftershave and complaints about the countryside. "Darling, the train from London was an endurance test. I sat next to a man eating Scotch eggs on a morning service." Agatha smirked. "Welcome to civilization." "This village is allergic to civilization. Everyone stares like I'm Liberace. That's because you dress like him. They lunched at the Red Lion, Roy narrating each bite as though on television. Between courses, Agatha filled him in on the Salon, the argument she'd overheard, and Lila's disappearance. So, the assistant goes missing, the boss blames her, and you, naturally, suspect him. Naturally, said Agatha. Roy dabbed his lips. Well, we can't have your reputation for meddling suffer. Lead on, Poirot in pearls. They drove to Evesham under a lowering sky. The salon was closed again, blinds drawn. Around the back, the alley reeked of damp cardboard and old shampoo. Roy wrinkled his nose. Darling, this is no place for couture shoes. Then stand guard, said Agatha, already rummaging among the bins. Guard? Against what, rabbit hair dryers? She ignored him. Behind the largest bin, something pale caught her eye, and a strap. She tugged gently and drew out a handbag, smeared with dust but intact. Lila's, she said. I saw it before. Same cheap pink leather. Inside lay a compact, a broken comb, and a lipstick, uncapped, still bright coral. No money, no keys. Roy peered over her shoulder. Maybe she dropped it while eloping with Mr. Wright. Or maybe someone wanted it to look that way. She zipped it shut. The air smelled faintly of ammonia and something darker. Fear, perhaps, if such a thing had a scent. Let's take this to Bill, she said. Roy hesitated. Won't he shout? Probably, but shouting means interest, and interest means progress. They walked back to the car, the handbag dangling between them like evidence of shared folly. At home that night, Agatha set the bag on the table and stared at it, while Hodge purred under the lamp. The lipstick gleamed unnaturally cheerful against the worn leather. She poured a gin, watching the bubbles rise. Somewhere in the quiet, the phone clicked with a message on her answering machine. Sebastian's voice, smooth as silk. Mrs. Raisin, I trust you're pleased with your colour now. Do come in soon. We mustn't let things fade. She replayed it twice, uncertain why it sounded like a warning. Lighting a cigarette, she exhaled thoughtfully. Don't worry, Sebastian, she murmured. Nothing about me ever fades. Hodge blinked, unimpressed, and stretched a paw towards the handbag as if to claim the final word. The drizzle had lifted, leaving Carsley polished and smug under a pale sun. Agatha Raisin, staring at her reflection in the hallway mirror, decided she looked rather magnificent in sequins. True, the top was slightly too glittering for an afternoon event, but one couldn't fight evil, or Evesham, without armour. Hodge, sprawled on the hall rug, flicked his tail in disapproval. Don't start, she said, fastening her earrings. Sebastian Darcy wants to charm the village. I'll give him competition. Nobody dazzles me twice. She spritzed perfume, grabbed her handbag, and swept out before she could change her mind. Le Coiffeur Elegant was ablaze with mirrors, champagne, and self-importance. A banner announced Charity Hair Evening for the Evesham Hospital Appeal. Every respectable woman from the district seemed present, all vying to be trimmed for virtue. Agatha took in the scene with grim amusement. Under the blow-dryers, gossip whirred faster than the machines. Mrs. Ferris of the Evesham Garden Club was holding forth about the missing assistant. Ran off with a lover, I shouldn't wonder, she said, voice carrying over the hum. They're all the same, these young ones. No backbone. Agatha slid into a nearby chair. Not everyone vanishes for romance, Mrs. Ferris. Some of us just need a decent haircut. Sebastian appeared like an actor hitting his cue. Mrs. Raisin, you look radiant, a vision from the West End. More like the Red Lion, she said, but preened all the same. He offered champagne, a peace offering for the, experimental highlights. Consider yourself forgiven, conditionally. His laugh was too smooth. I hope tonight proves we're a respectable business. A little good publicity never hurts. Especially when someone's gone missing, said Agatha. The glass halted halfway to his lips. Then too quickly the smile returned. One mustn't feed rumour. Poor Lila had personal problems. I'm sure she'll resurface. Agatha's gaze flicked to the key on the chain at his waist. And in the meantime, you keep everything safely locked away. Trade secrets, he said lightly. Even hair has mysteries. Bill Wong arrived mid-evening, looking faintly embarrassed to be there. His plain suit and police expression clashed with the salon's gloss. Thought I'd have a look, he muttered to Agatha. Routine follow-up. You're here for the gossip. Admit it, she whispered. Half of Evesham's under one roof. He gave her a look. Try not to start any more rumours. Sebastian spotted them and approached with effusive warmth. Inspector, sergeant, whichever, have a glass of champagne. We must support community spirit. Bill declined. Just checking details. You said you were here late Thursday evening? Yes, alone with a client. Mrs. Ferris will confirm. Indeed I will, said Mrs. Ferris, appearing with her hair half set and her dignity fully armed. But not late. I left before 8. My husband insists on supper at the same time every night, bless him. Sebastian stayed to tidy up. A pause thickened the air. Sebastian's smile flickered. Quite. I worked on stock till after 10. Agatha caught Bill's eyebrow lift, his version of fireworks. Thank you, Bill said mildly. We'll confirm times. Sebastian turned the charm back on Agatha. See what I endure. Interrogated while raising money for charity. You're a martyr to Moose, she said. He chuckled, but his eyes darted toward the back room. The evening wore on with curls, chatter, and ostentatious donations. Agatha circulated like a journalist at a scandal. She gathered snippets. Lila's sister had called from Worcester. The police had searched the canal. Sebastian had been spotted arguing with a delivery driver the week before. None of it amounted to proof, but it smelled of smoke. Roy arrived halfway through, flamboyant as a peacock in scarlet silk. Darling, this place, it's like ab-fab with hairnets. Behave, Agatha hissed. We're observing. Observing what? Split ends? Suspects, he sighed. Same thing, really. As the raffle began, Agatha wandered near the back corridor. A staff-only sign guarded a small door, the same one she'd seen before, the cupboard. She tugged the handle, locked, of course. A faint chemical smell drifted through the crack, ammonia, and something else, sharper. She turned quickly as Sebastian approached, still smiling, though a bead of sweat shone at his temple. Curiosity doesn't suit you, Mrs. Raisin. You'll get wrinkles. I've earned every one, she said. Some of us prefer truth to toner. By closing time, the salon gleamed, its mirrors reflecting champagne fatigue. Outside, the street lamps turned the wet pavement to pewter. Agatha lingered by her car, pretending to search for keys. Bill joined her. Well? He's lying, she said flatly. About the time, about Lila, about everything. Possibly, but lies aren't crimes. They should be. He smiled faintly. I'll see what the lab says about that handbag you found. In the meantime, don't trespass. You think I'd do something reckless? I think you already have, she sniffed. That's experience, not recklessness. Bill shook his head and walked away, rain beginning to fall again in lazy drops. Back in Carsley, Agatha poured herself a gin and told Hodge the entire story. The cat blinked with the patient expression of one forced to hear the same confession nightly. He's hiding something, she said, and it's not hair dye. The answering machine light blinked. She pressed play, Sebastian's voice again, smooth as poured cream. Mrs. Raisin, thank you for attending tonight. So kind of you to support the salon. Do visit soon, alone if you please. There's something I'd like to discuss privately. She frowned. Privately, in that tone, could mean confession or trap. She stubbed out her cigarette and glanced at the clock. Nearly midnight. Curiosity won. She drove back to Evesham, headlights slicing the mist. The high street was deserted, shop fronts shuttered, puddles glinting under lamps. Le Coiffeur loomed ahead, its windows dark. Then, movement at the rear. Agatha parked discreetly beside the florist's van and crept down the alley. Sebastian stood by a dustbin, coat collar up, the glow of a small fire lighting his face. In his hands, a bundle of papers crackled, letters, photographs, something that flamed too quickly. He watched until only ash remained, then ground it under his heel. Agatha held her breath, heart thudding. A gust of smoke blew her way, sharp with singed perfume and secrets. He turned suddenly, scanning the alley. She ducked behind the bin, muttering a prayer that vanity didn't smell of sequins. After a long moment, he walked off towards the car park, the key at his belt catching the lamplight. Agatha waited until silence returned. Only then did she straighten, brushing soot from her sleeve. Burning evidence, she whispered, or maybe just bad reviews. Back in her car, she felt a thrill of triumph and unease. People lied, yes, but lies rarely needed matches. As she started the engine, Hodge's absence felt oddly sharp, as if she'd left her common sense at home along with him. "You'd have hissed and given me away," she murmured to the empty seat. Rain thickened on the windscreen, erasing her reflection until only the faint gleam of orange hair showed in the glass. "If I'm not careful," she said aloud, "I'll match the flames." She drove off into the mist, half exhilarated, half afraid, certain of only one thing: whatever Sebastian Darcy was hiding, it wasn't going to stay buried under ashes. The next morning, the sky over Carsley promised nothing and delivered less. A thin drizzle still wove through the hedgerows as Agatha Raisin stood at her cottage window, glaring out as if the weather had personally insulted her ambition. "Typical," she muttered. "A day made for scandal, and all I've got is damp curls." Roy Silver, now occupying her guest room and most of her patients, appeared in the doorway wearing silk pyjamas patterned with little telephones. "You're cross because your hair's frizzed," he said cheerfully. "The weather can smell insecurity." "And you can smell my gin," she retorted, lighting a cigarette. Roy ignored the smoke and began rearranging her kitchen counter as though auditioning for a lifestyle program. "If I'm staying here, darling, we need a system. Magazines on one pile, bills in another, and that tragic teapot in the bin." "Touch the teapot and you're on the pavement," Agatha warned. "I'm busy. Detective work waits for no man, not even you." He gave her a knowing look. "Ah, the case of the vanishing peroxide princess. Still no word from your gorgeous stylist?" "None, and the police are moving slower than Doris Simpson on cleaning day." She tapped ash into the sink. "If they won't find answers, I will." By 11, Agatha was in Evesham, armed with notebook, handbag, and enough self-confidence to pass for authority. She began her rounds in the most strategic of places, the salon itself. The new assistant, a girl barely 20, was giving a pensioner a perm that smelled faintly of despair. Agatha perched nearby, pretending to flick through a magazine. "Shame about the other girl," she said lightly. "What was her name again?" "Lila," said the pensioner, eager for gossip. "Pretty thing, always rushing. I saw her talking to a man outside the post office last week. Looked shifty. You don't think—" "Probably an admirer," Agatha interrupted, making a note all the same. Another customer under curlers leaned in conspiratorially. "If you ask me, she was mixed up with Sebastian. You could see it in the way she looked at him. Men like that never settle for one head of hair." Agatha raised an eyebrow. "And what sort of men is that?" "Beautiful ones," the woman sighed. Agatha thanked them both, half pleased, half irritated. Beautiful men are trouble, she thought, but at least they make it interesting. She left the salon to find Roy waiting outside with 2 takeaway cappuccinos and an air of martyrdom. "You're wasting your charm on Evesham housewives," he said. "You should be in London charming editors." "I'm gathering evidence," Agatha replied. "One can't solve a case without groundwork." "One can't keep dry without an umbrella," he pointed out, glancing at the drizzle. "Stop fussing. We're going to the post office." The post office queue was long, full of the damp and disgruntled. Agatha took advantage of the wait to make conversation. "Terrible business about that Salon girl," she remarked to the woman ahead of her. "Yes, my cousin saw her with some man," came the reply. "Tall, dark coat, looked Londonish." "Londonish," Agatha repeated, savouring the provincial suspicion in the word. "What does that mean?" "Expensive shoes. You can tell a Londoner by their shoes." When they emerged, Roy was already lighting a cigarette under the awning. "So, the mysterious man in London shoes," he said. "How delightfully vague." "Most people are vague until you feed them tea," said Agatha. "That's why I'm stopping at the bakery next." "Ah, yes," Roy drawled. "The Raisin method of interrogation, carbohydrates and flattery. It works." By the time they returned to Carsley, Roy had carried in 2 bags of pastries and 1 large complaint about country living. "It's too damp, too quiet, and there's nowhere to get decent sushi," he lamented. "If you say urban energy, I'll throw you into the duck pond," Agatha snapped. He grinned. "You'd miss me the moment you needed a quote for the papers." "You're not wrong," she said grudgingly. "Now go ring Bill Wong and ask what he's found." "He'll talk to you, darling. He likes your forceful charm." "He likes peace," Agatha said, "and I never give it to him." Bill arrived that afternoon, notebook under one arm and a damp expression. "You're not helping," he began without preamble. "Half of Evesham's now convinced we've got a serial hairdresser on the loose." "Then find him before he strikes again," Agatha retorted. Bill sighed. "We've interviewed Sebastian Darcy. He says he was at the Salon alone after Mrs. Ferris left. And Mrs. Ferris says she left before 8, Agatha said. I was there when she said it. Yes, well, Sebastian claims he stayed late inventorying stock. Stock doesn't argue or disappear, she said. I think Lila found something she shouldn't have. Or someone she shouldn't have, Bill corrected. She may have left voluntarily. And left her handbag. He rubbed his forehead. Agatha, please don't. Interfere? Bill, I live to interfere. He gave her a weary smile. I'll regret asking, but what's your theory this hour? Sebastian's hiding something, and possibly burning it. Bill blinked. Burning it? Long story, involving smoke, sequins, and my superior intuition. He laughed despite himself. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Later that evening, Charles Fraith appeared at her door, all charm and tweed. Heard you're sleuthing again, he said. Thought I'd rescue you with lunch. You mean you're bored, Agatha said, fetching her coat. A little, but you're my favourite form of boredom. They drove to a pub in Moreton-in-Marsh where the specials board offered steak and scandal. Charles ordered wine. Agatha, ever hopeful, ordered information. Tell me, she said, what do you know about Sebastian Darcy? Hairdresser, likes mirrors, owes someone money, probably flirts with his reflection. Why? Because his assistant's missing and his story stinks. Charles swirled his glass. I did hear something, purely from the gossip pages, of course. He once worked at an exclusive London salon that closed suddenly. Whisper of blackmail, client secrets, that sort of thing. Agatha leaned forward. Blackmail? Just rumour. These beauty types collect confidences like tips. I imagine he learned all sorts before the scandal broke. And Lila could have known about it, Agatha mused, or tried to use it. My dear Agatha, Charles said lazily, you do make crime sound glamorous. I almost envy your obsession. It's not obsession, it's civic duty. And vanity, he added. You love proving you're cleverer than the police. Because I am, she said, and drained her glass. That night, Castley glowed with its usual domestic calm, curtains drawn, lights warm behind rain-slick windows. Inside her cottage, Agatha sat by the fire, notebook open. Hodge stretched across her lap, purring with the smugness of the truly idle. Roy was on the sofa, painting his nails and criticizing her handwriting. If you ever go missing, he said, they'll think a spider wrote your will. Hush, I'm making a list. Of what? Suspects, motives, red herrings. You left out one category. Which? Yourself. She gave him a dark look. You're in danger of eviction. You wouldn't dare, he said, blowing on his nails. Try me. The phone rang, sharp and unexpected. Agatha snatched it up. Raisin. Bill's voice sounded strained. Agatha, I need you to stay out of this next bit. What's happened? A body's been found in the Avon. Female, blonde hair, could be her. For a heartbeat, Agatha said nothing. Even Roy stopped talking. Where exactly? She asked. Near the old footbridge. We're heading there now. Do you know if... We don't know anything yet, Bill cut in. And please, Agatha, don't come down, promise me. She hung up without replying. Roy watched her face. Is it Lila? Could be. Then you're thinking what I'm thinking. Yes, she said, standing. That my raincoat's by the door. Roy groaned. Darling, the body's in the river, not the hair section. Bodies don't float themselves into answers, she said briskly. Outside, the drizzle thickened into steady rain. Agatha stepped into it, feeling the damp sting her cheeks. Somewhere beyond the hedgerows, the Avon flowed cold and secretive, keeping its confidences better than any hairdresser. Red herrings, she murmured. Let's hope this one isn't. Hodge watched her go, tail flicking once like a disapproving metronome, before curling back into the chair with the air of someone resigned to another long night. Morning broke damp and grey, as though the clouds were still deciding whether decency required a full rain. Castley looked washed but not cleansed. In Agatha Raisin's kitchen, the kettle shrieked. Hodge sprawled across yesterday's Evesham Courier, and Roy Silver was complaining about rural trauma. Honestly, darling, a corpse in the river. I'm traumatized and I wasn't even there. Agatha poured tea. That's because the Avon's in Evesham, not Soho. You'd never leave the house if tragedy involved mud. Mud ruins shoes, he said gravely. So does death, she replied, lighting a cigarette. Bill Wong's call from the previous night still rang in her head. A body had been recovered near the old footbridge. Female, blonde hair. Now Agatha sat rigid with nerves and pride. She told herself it wasn't fear, just professional curiosity. Roy slurped noisily. They'll identify her soon enough. Then you can stop glaring at the kettle and get back to gossip. You're confusing gossip with investigation. And you're confusing obsession with civic duty. Finish your tea before I poison it, she said sweetly. By mid-morning, Carsley's grapevine was in full bloom. Doris Simpson arrived to clean and deliver news simultaneously. They've pulled her out proper now, Mrs. Raisin. All bloated up, poor soul. Blonde, like that missing Lila. My cousin's husband saw the van go past with the body bag. You have a cousin everywhere, Agatha muttered. Connections are life, Doris said primly, shaking out a duster. They reckon the police are checking dental records. Terrible thing. That salon's cursed, if you ask me. No one did, but Agatha's stomach twisted. She stubbed out her cigarette, fetched her Mac, and ignored Roy's theatrical groan. If you must go corpse hunting, at least take a scarf, he called after her. The dead may be beyond caring, but fashion isn't. Evesham's riverside was sealed off with blue tape and officious constables. The air smelled of mud and disinfectant. Agatha spotted Bill Wong near the footbridge, talking to a forensic officer. You again? He said, resigned. Couldn't resist, could you? Don't flatter yourself. I came to offer moral support. You don't do moral support. You do interference. She peered toward the riverbank. Is it Lila? We thought so. Same build, same hair colour, but it's not. Not? Older, late 40s. We've ID'd her as Mrs. Veronica Dale, lived alone near Breeden. Used to be one of Sebastian Darcy's clients. Agatha felt an odd pang, relief tangled with disappointment. Connected to the Salon again, she said quietly. That place sheds women like autumn leaves. Bill lowered his voice. Between us, we found a note in her handbag. He said he'd ruin me. Agatha's eyes brightened. He? Sebastian? Don't start guessing. We're not even sure what she meant. People don't write suicide notes about haircuts, Bill. Maybe she wasn't talking about hair. Agatha drew on her cigarette. No, she was talking about secrets. Or vanity, he said. It can destroy more than mirrors. You sound like Mrs. Bloxby. That's because she's right most of the time. Agatha returned home under a bruised sky. Mrs. Bloxby herself was waiting on the garden path, hands clasped, calm as ever. I heard about the poor woman, she said. So tragic. And convenient, Agatha replied. Agatha? Oh, don't look at me like that. It ties to the Salon, and I'm not letting go. Mrs. Bloxby smiled faintly. Vanity can lead to dangerous places. So can curiosity, Agatha retorted. Yet here we are, alive and nosy. Inside, she poured tea while Mrs. Bloxby settled on the sofa. The vicar's wife had the knack of quieting a room simply by existing. Perhaps this Veronica had been blackmailed, Agatha mused aloud. That note. He said he'd ruin me. Sebastian was mixed up in that London scandal. Maybe she threatened to expose him. Or maybe she was simply frightened of growing old, said Mrs. Bloxby gently. Fear can sound dramatic when written in ink. Agatha frowned. You're determined to make this poetic. I prefer suspects to sonnets. Hodge yawned, unimpressed by either. That evening the Red Lion was thick with chatter and steam from damp coats. Agatha and Roy took a corner table, drawing the usual glances, part admiration, part alarm. If I hear mysterious drowning one more time, Agatha said, I'll drown the next person myself. You can't blame them, said Roy. This is the most excitement they've had since the WI jam theft scandal. That was you, she reminded him. Allegedly. Bill appeared, smelling faintly of rain and responsibility. All right, you two. No interviews tonight, understood? We're civilians having a drink, said Agatha. Entirely respectable. That'll be the day, he murmured, sliding into the booth. He set a file folder down, then hesitated. You didn't get this from me. Agatha pounced before he could change his mind. The report was brief but tantalizing. Victim, Veronica Dale, age 47. Cause of death, drowning. Note recovered in handbag. The line beneath caught her eye, recent financial distress, large withdrawals over several months. Blackmail, she breathed. Speculation, said Bill, and not for the press. Who needs the press when you've got me? He groaned. That's what worries me. Roy raised his glass. To vanity and victims, may we age disgracefully, but live to tell it. Agatha clinked his glass half-heartedly. I intend to outlive the murderer at least. The next morning, Doris Simpson returned armed with a mop, moral outrage, and fresh intelligence. You'll never believe what I've heard, Mrs. Raisin. My friend's niece works in the phone shop in Evesham. She says that Lila, yes, our Lila, was overheard arguing on the payphone the day before she vanished. Agatha leaned forward. Arguing with whom? Couldn't see, but she said the voice was male, not gentlemanly, one of those rough sorts, loud, rude, foreign perhaps. Foreign how? Could be Brummy, Doris said darkly. Agatha made a note anyway. So, Lila had a man, and Veronica had a note. Both knew Sebastian. Interesting symmetry. You're not meddling again, are you? I call it pattern recognition. The police call it obstruction, Doris muttered, heading for the broom cupboard. Agatha smiled thinly. They'll thank me when I solve it. She spent the afternoon in her office corner, the small desk between the window and Hodge's cushion, going through her thoughts aloud. 2 blondes, both linked to Sebastian Darcy. One drowned, one missing. One threatened with ruin, one possibly threatening. Add a handsome liar with good hair and a locked cupboard, and we've got either melodrama or murder. Hodge opened one eye. You're right, she said. It's always both. She dialed Sebastian's number. It rang and finally clicked to a recorded voice. Le coiffeur élégant thanks you for your call. We are closed for refurbishment. Refurbishment, my foot, she muttered. He's bolted. Roy appeared with a tray of sandwiches. Your lunch, detective. You'll faint before you find the villain. Unlikely, she said, taking a bite. My blood's 90% caffeine. By dusk, the drizzle had returned, steady and persistent. Agatha drove back to Evesham, parking near the darkened salon. A police notice on the door warned premises under investigation. She peered through the window. The mirrors reflected only emptiness, chairs neatly aligned like soldiers awaiting orders. Yet something glittered faintly on the counter, a small cosmetics case left behind. Her heart quickened. She glanced around, found the side door unlatched, typical police thoroughness, and slipped inside. The salon smelled faintly of hairspray and secrets. She picked up the case. Inside were brushes, a half-used compact, and, beneath the lining, a small brass key, identical to the one she'd seen hanging from Sebastian's belt. Well, well, she whispered. Our Lila kept souvenirs. A floorboard creaked somewhere behind her. Agatha froze. The silence felt thick enough to cut. Then came the faint scurry of a rat, or something less innocent. She slipped the key into her pocket and left quickly, locking the door behind her with the practiced guilt of a woman who'd once stolen roses from her neighbour's garden. Back in Carsley, she poured herself a gin and tonic, the lime fizzing like applause. Hodge jumped onto the armchair, tail flicking. Don't look smug, she told him. We've got a key, a corpse, and a coward with scissors. That's progress. She lit a cigarette, exhaled thoughtfully, and watched the smoke curl against the lamplight. Vanity can lead to dangerous places, Mrs. Bloxby had said. Perhaps it could also lead to truth. Outside, the drizzle thickened into rain, pattering on the roof like quiet applause for a show not yet finished. Hodge stretched, unimpressed. Agatha smiled faintly. All right, you win. Tomorrow I'll buy proper cat food before chasing murderers. But her eyes drifted to the small brass key on the table, glinting under the lamp. And then, she said softly, we'll see what door you open. Morning brought a sharp wind and the sour smell of wet gravel. Carsley looked newly scrubbed, but none the cleaner for it. Bill Wong had brought Lila over at first light, insisting she'd be safer in Carsley than anywhere near Evesham. In Agatha Raisin's cottage, the kettle hissed, the cat sulked, and Lila Trent sat at Agatha's kitchen table, pale as skimmed milk and twice as thin. You're safe now, Agatha said, setting down a plate of toast that neither of them wanted. Tell me everything. Start at the beginning, skip the tears. Lila's hands trembled round her mug. It started in London. Sebastian kept a file, clients' secrets, things they told him in confidence. He sold them to journalists. Some famous people paid him to keep quiet. When I found the receipts, he panicked, said I'd ruined him. I ran. Roy Silver, perched on the arm of a chair like an over-decorated parrot, gasped theatrically. Darling, blackmail by blow-dryer. It's practically Shakespearean. Agatha shot him a look. "This isn't the West End. Keep quiet." "He followed me," Lila whispered. "In the car. I hid near the river." Agatha's eyes narrowed. "The Avon? You said you ran from Evesham. It rained that night, yet your shoes were dry when I found you." Lila blinked. "I changed them." "Into what? You had one suitcase." Silence stretched. Roy sipped his tea, delighted by tension that wasn't his. Agatha leaned closer. "You're lying, Lila. Try again." The girl's composure cracked. "All right. I didn't hide by the river. I went to London. I knew a journalist. He promised to protect me if I told him what Sebastian had done." Roy gasped again. "Not the journalist from the Mirror?" "Maybe," Lila muttered. Agatha sat back, furious. "So you sold the story." "I needed money, and someone had to expose him." "Spare me the noble motive," said Agatha. "You wanted your picture in the paper." Lila's chin lifted. "You don't understand." "I understand opportunism. I've practiced it myself." Roy, seeing Agatha's temper rising, intervened with the tact of a peacock. "Let's not throw handbags, ladies. We're all victims of fashion here." "Stay out of it," Agatha snapped. An hour later, Charles Frayth appeared, lured by the promise of scandal and coffee. He took in the scene, the nervous girl, the furious hostess, and Roy clutching a cushion for protection. "Good Lord," he said lightly. "It's like a Noel Coward play directed by the police." "We've discovered Miss Trent is less damsel than dealer," Agatha said. Lila flushed. "I was frightened." Charles regarded her kindly but coolly. Frightened people don't give interviews. They vanish quietly. Her eyes darted away. "And," he went on, "if you'd been hiding in London, how did you know where to find Agatha again?" Lila bit her lip. "He told me to come here." "He?" "Sebastian. He called. Said he wanted to explain. He said he'd meet me. Then he didn't come." Agatha's anger faltered. "When was this?" "Yesterday afternoon." "He's alive then," said Agatha. "He was." Charles gave a low whistle. "You do collect murderers, Agatha. Ever consider a quieter hobby, gardening perhaps?" "Gardens hide bodies too," she said. By midday, the household resembled a minor asylum. Roy insisted on cooking omelettes for morale. Hodge glared at Lila from his perch, and Agatha paced the sitting room, cigarette in hand. "If she's lying about London, she's lying about everything," she muttered. "Maybe Sebastian's the real victim here." "He's certainly better groomed," Roy offered. Charles chuckled. "You're jealous because he outflattered you, Aggie." "Jealous my foot. I simply dislike being manipulated." "Which is why you spend half your life manipulating others. That's strategy, not deceit." The phone rang. Agatha pounced. Bill Wong's weary voice crackled down the line. "We've found Sebastian's car, abandoned near Broadway Tower." Agatha's pulse quickened. "And?" "Blood on the driver's seat. A pair of scissors wrapped in a towel. No sign of him." Roy turned pale. "Blood? Actual blood? I'm fainting." "Do it somewhere washable," Agatha said, hanging up. Charles looked grim. "That doesn't sound like a man on holiday." "Or like suicide," Agatha said slowly. "More like panic or pursuit." "You think someone silenced him?" "Or he silenced himself," she said. "Vanity makes cowards inventive." By late afternoon, the news had travelled faster than any police car. Carsley's post office buzzed. Doris Simpson arrived to clean and gather gossip in equal measure. "They say he cut his own wrists," she told Agatha cheerfully, wielding a feather duster. "Right gruesome, that." "Don't spread nonsense," said Agatha. "I don't spread it," Doris replied. "I merely pass it along." Roy, still pale, waved her away. "We're in mourning, for my nerves." "Well," said Doris, "if you will mix with dangerous people, you can't expect peace. Mrs. Bloxby says prayer helps." "So would discretion," muttered Agatha. That evening the Red Lion was crowded, the air thick with beer and speculation. Charles bought the first round. Agatha lit another cigarette despite the landlord's glare. "They think it's suicide," she said. "But the scissors, why wrap them in a towel?" "To stop bleeding on the upholstery," Charles suggested dryly. "Or to make it look tidy," said Agatha. "People who kill themselves don't worry about stains." "You'd be surprised," said Roy. "I'd tidy before dying. One hates to be found untidy." "If you ever die, it'll be of vanity, not violence," she said. Bill Wong entered, rain glistening on his coat. He looked exhausted. "I was right. You're all here." Agatha offered a seat. Any news? Sebastian's body was found an hour ago. Woodland near the tower. Empty bottle of pills beside him. The pub went quiet. Agatha stubbed out her cigarette. So it was suicide. Appears so, but appearances, as you keep proving, can lie. You sound unconvinced. Because I am. No fingerprints on the bottle. None of his on the car keys either. Then someone staged it, said Agatha. Possibly, or he wore gloves. Men like Sebastian don't ruin manicures with gloves, she said. Bill sighed. Please, Agatha, leave this one alone. The press are circling, and if they find out you're involved, they already know, said Roy helpfully. Bill groaned. I should have transferred to Oxford. You'd miss me, said Agatha. That's what I'm afraid of, he said, and left. Back home, the wind howled round the cottage chimney. Lila sat by the fire, eyes red but dry. He's dead, isn't he? She said quietly. So they claim, said Agatha. He wasn't evil, Lila murmured. Just desperate. Agatha studied her. You knew about the blackmail and said nothing. I thought if he stopped, no one would get hurt. That's what everyone thinks before someone drowns. Roy emerged from the kitchen holding a glass of wine and a first aid kit. In case of emotional collapse, he said. Yours or mine? Asked Agatha. Whichever occurs first. Charles, lounging in the armchair, said mildly, You're awfully quiet, Aggie. Usually by now you'd be drafting headlines. Something's wrong, she said. He wouldn't take pills, too vain. He'd choose something stylish. Gas, perhaps, or a dramatic leap. That's morbid, said Roy. It's logical. This feels staged. Lila shivered. Then who did it? That's what we'll find out, said Agatha. You can't fight them, Lila whispered. Them who? But Lila only stared into the fire. Later, when the house had quieted, Agatha sat alone with Hodge and a glass of gin. The fire crackled. Roy's snores drifted faintly from the spare room. She turned the events over in her mind like mismatched hairpins, a blackmail ring, a frightened girl, a man too proud to beg for help. Hodge stretched luxuriously, then pawed at the ashtray. Don't look so moral, she said. You're the only male I can trust. Outside, a siren wailed distantly along the Mercester Road. Agatha watched the reflection of the fire in her glass and thought of Sebastian's charm, his fear, the polished mask cracking at last. Vanity kills, she murmured, but it always looks lovely doing it. She sighed, stubbed out her cigarette, and gathered the courage to face the morning paper. Somewhere in the night, Carsley's church bell tolled once, soft, accidental, and oddly final. Morning arrived late in Carsley, sliding through a gauze of drizzle that turned the hedgerows the colour of dull pewter. Agatha Raisin sat at her kitchen table, cigarette smouldering, newspaper unopened. Hodge occupied the other chair like a small critic waiting for a performance to fail. Roy Silver entered in dressing-gown splendour, brandishing the Evesham Courier. Front page, darling. Hairdresser's tragic death. Suicide shock. Agatha snatched it. The photograph showed Sebastian Darcy smiling faintly, his hair immaculate even in death. She made a disgusted sound. Suicide, my foot. Too vain to ruin his manicure. Roy poured coffee. He did own rather marvellous cuticles. He also owned enemies, she said. The police have tied it up too neatly. Pills, note, end of story. They forget the scissors wrapped in a towel. Maybe he had hygiene standards. She ignored that. We're going back to Evesham. Someone profited from his secrets, and that someone's still very much alive. Roy groaned. Can't we at least have toast before danger? The drive was short and wet. Evesham's high street glistened under slate-coloured clouds, the shop windows fogged by central heating and gossip. Le Coiffeur Elegant had reopened under a new manager, nervous, apologetic, eager to distance the place from its deceased founder. Agatha pushed through the door, trailing drizzle and authority. Mrs. Raisin, trilled Penelope Frith, emerging from under a hairdryer like a resurrected duchess. Pearls gleamed at her throat, her lipstick freshly militant. Still sleuthing, are we? I told everyone you'd be back. You must be psychic, said Agatha. Merely observant, said Penelope, smoothing her cape. You do adore a scandal. And you do adore other people's misfortunes, Agatha returned. Roy hovered near the reception desk, pretending to study shampoo bottles. Tragic business, Sebastian's death, Penelope said, her tone pure sympathy, her eyes pure theatre. Such a shame for his reputation. Still, one must move on. Indeed, said Agatha. How fortunate that you've recovered your investment in the Evesham Trust. Penelope blinked. I beg your pardon? Agatha produced from her handbag a small cream appointment card, the Salon's logo embossed in silver, written in Sebastian's tidy script, P.F. Evesham Trust, wed 11 a.m. He kept very organised notes, said Agatha. I imagine this one refers to you. The woman's smile froze. It could be anyone. P.F. being an extremely common set of initials, said Agatha dryly. You've no right to pry into the affairs of the dead. You're right, said Agatha, but the dead have an inconvenient habit of haunting the curious. A hairdryer whirred somewhere behind them. The Salon's chatter had subsided. All ears were tilted their way. Penelope rose, pearls clinking. I've nothing to hide. I was one of his clients, yes. He gave me advice, nothing more. Financial advice? Friendly advice, which cost you thousands when his tip failed. Penelope's eyes flashed. He swore it was reliable. And when you lost the money, you blamed him, said Agatha quietly. He laughed, she whispered, laughed and said it would teach me humility. Roy edged closer. Perhaps we should all calm down before anyone starts styling with scissors. Penelope gave a brittle laugh. You think I killed him? You had motive, said Agatha, and opportunity. You were his last appointment. The colour drained from Penelope's powdered cheeks. Oh, leave me alone. She turned sharply, catching sight of the nearest styling station. The glint of metal flashed. Roy squeaked. Agatha stepped back as Penelope snatched a pair of scissors from the counter. He ruined me first, she cried. The room froze. A junior stylist screamed. Agatha held her ground, voice steady but soft. Put them down, Penelope. The only thing worse than bankruptcy is bad publicity. For a moment, Penelope trembled on the edge between fury and collapse. Then the scissors clattered to the floor. She crumpled into a chair, sobbing. Roy exhaled loudly. Well, that's my cardio for the week. Later, in Bill Wong's office, Agatha recounted the scene while Roy revived himself with tea. Bill looked unimpressed. You could have been hurt. She's all talk, said Agatha. Her manicure cost more than her conscience. We'll question her again, said Bill. But be warned, she's already claiming you provoked her. Good, said Agatha. Maybe I'll make the papers. Try to avoid handcuffs this time, Bill muttered. Roy fluttered his lashes. She thrives on restraint. Bill ignored him. You're playing a dangerous game, Agatha. Penelope Frith isn't the only one with secrets. The Evesham Trust handled half the county's gossip money. If Sebastian was feeding them tips, plenty of people will want this buried. Agatha stubbed out her cigarette in his ashtray. Buried things have a nasty habit of sprouting. And you, he said, standing, have a nasty habit of digging them up. Occupational hazard, she said. That evening, Carsley was drenched in a fine mist that turned every lamplight into a halo. Agatha walked to the vicarage, scarf tight around her neck. Mrs. Bloxby greeted her with tea and the gentle expression that made confessions unavoidable. I hear there was excitement in Evesham, said Mrs. Bloxby mildly. A bit of melodrama, said Agatha. One woman, one pair of scissors, a dash of hysteria. And your own dash of recklessness, I imagine? Naturally, Mrs. Bloxby poured the tea. Bill says you think Penelope Frith killed Sebastian. I think she might have helped him along. She lost money. He mocked her. That's not quite the same as murder, said Mrs. Bloxby. Agatha sighed. You're going to say something moral, aren't you? I was going to say human. We all want admiration, Agatha. Sometimes we confuse it with affection, even you. Agatha looked away. Don't turn this into therapy. I came for tea, not insight. Mrs. Bloxby smiled. Insight's free with every biscuit. Agatha bit hers resentfully. You see people's flaws so clearly, said Mrs. Bloxby, but you forgive your own too easily. Be careful not to mistake pride for strength. You make me sound tragic, said Agatha. Just human, said Mrs. Bloxby. Outside, the drizzle thickened to rain. Agatha left with the uncomfortable sense of having been both comforted and scolded. Back home, Roy was rearranging her magazines by colour. Therapy session over? He asked. Don't start. I never do. I merely finish. She poured herself a gin. We need to know who else lost money through Sebastian's tips. Penelope is not the only victim. Or villain, said Charles, appearing in the doorway. Agatha jumped. "How do you keep getting in?" "You leave the door open, probably hoping I'll arrive." "Delusional aristocrat," she muttered, but she smiled despite herself. Charles took a seat. "I've been making calls. The Evesham Trust was a fancy name for 3 rich busybodies who thought insider trading was a parlour game. Penelope was one. The others have lawyers. Sebastian was their messenger, gathering gossip from his clients, turning it into stock tips. When one went wrong, someone panicked." Agatha's eyes gleamed. "So he wasn't just selling beauty, he was selling information." "Exactly." "Then Penelope's outburst makes sense. She thought he'd exposed her." "Or threatened to," said Charles. "You do realize you're meddling in financial crime now, not village feuds." "Crime is crime," she said, "and vanity runs through both." Roy looked up from the sofa. "Darling, if you start arresting everyone vain, half of Evesham will hang, including you." "Possibly," she said, "but I'd look marvellous on the gallows." The following morning, the Salon reopened officially, its new manager shaking like a leaf. Agatha arrived early, uninvited but unstoppable. The mirrors gleamed, the air smelled of ammonia and nerves. Penelope Frith appeared soon after, dressed in mourning black, lips crimson as guilt. The other patrons pretended to read magazines, but watched her reflection instead. "Come to apologize?" she asked icily. "Come to understand," said Agatha. "You were his last appointment, Penelope. You argued. He died. That's quite a coincidence. You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" Agatha drew another card from her bag, this one torn. The ink smudged but legible. "Evesham Trust, PF confirmed." "He kept records, you see," said Agatha. "Blackmail, brokerage, same principle, really." Penelope's breath hitched. "He said he'd tell the papers. Said I was a fool. He—" Her voice cracked. "He what?" Agatha pressed. "He laughed at me. Said women like me paid for attention." "He wasn't wrong," Agatha murmured. Penelope's eyes blazed. "You're all the same. Smug judging." "We just prefer our humiliation in private," said Agatha. That did it. Penelope lunged. A flash of silver, the scissors again, gleaming under fluorescent light. Agatha ducked. The blade sliced the air where her shoulder had been. The manager screamed. Roy, entering with coffee, dropped the tray and fainted spectacularly. Charles, following close behind, caught Penelope's wrist mid-swing. The scissors clattered to the tiled floor. Now, he said calmly. "That's hardly the way to win an argument." Penelope sagged, weeping. "He ruined me first," she whispered. Agatha straightened, heart pounding, hair dishevelled but victorious. "So he did. But ruining oneself afterward is bad form." By evening, the storm had blown itself out. Bill called from the station. "Penelope's confessed enough to keep us busy," he said. "She says she confronted him. They struggled. He fell, hit his head. She panicked and staged the suicide." "Accidental, then?" "Possibly. Or conveniently accidental. We'll never be sure." Agatha stared into her gin. "He played too many games. Someone was bound to cut him down." "You sound almost sorry for him." "Almost," she said, and hung up. Later, the village was still. Hodge purred on the windowsill, tail twitching in dream. Roy snored faintly from the sofa. Charles dozed in the armchair, pretending not to. Agatha sat by the fire, smoke curling round her like thought. She thought of Penelope, proud, desperate, foolish, and of herself in quieter mirrors. Mrs. Bloxby had been right. Wanting admiration was a dangerous habit. She smiled ruefully and poured another gin. "Well, Hodge," she murmured, "at least I only kill time, not hairdressers." The cat opened one amber eye, unimpressed. "Don't look so smug," she said. "You'd chase a ribbon and call it destiny." Outside, the rain returned, soft as gossip, washing away the last of the scandal. Until the next one sprouted, neat as weeds in Castley's tidy soil. Castley woke to clear skies, though the ground still glistened from the night's downpour. The village looked deceptively peaceful. Cottages rinsed clean, roses bending under droplets, and sparrows gossiping along the hedges as if murder were a foreign language. Agatha Raisin stood at her window, mug in hand, watching the steam rise from the road. Hodge stretched on the sill beside her, blinking at the sun like an old skeptic. "You'd think the world's been washed of idiocy," she muttered. "Give it 5 minutes." The phone rang, Bill Wong's voice brisk with fatigue. "We've got her. Penelope Frith's at the station, screaming for a lawyer. You'd better come down before she demands an audience with the Queen. Is she confessing? More like performing. Bring your patience, and maybe your sense of humour. 1 out of 2, said Agatha, hanging up. Roy Silver appeared in the doorway, immaculate in lemon knitwear. Darling, tell me that's victory calling. Could be, or bureaucracy. Same thing, really. Put your face on. We're going to Mercester. At the station, Bill looked like a man who'd aged 10 years before breakfast. He met them in the corridor outside interview room 2. She's all nerves and righteousness, he said. Wants to confess, then unconfess, then cry for the cameras. Typical client, said Roy. Bill sighed. Please don't antagonize her. I haven't the paperwork for another scene. Inside, Penelope Frith sat pale and polished, pearls in perfect formation even under fluorescent light. Her mascara had surrendered, but her posture had not. Mrs. Raisin, she said, with the dignity of a dethroned monarch. I suppose you're enjoying this. Not particularly, said Agatha. I prefer crimes that don't involve bad haircuts and hysteria. Penelope's eyes glittered. You think me mad? No, said Agatha, just cornered. Penelope slammed her palm on the table. He laughed at me, said I was a fool. I wanted to frighten him, that's all. But he kept sneering, so I snatched the scissors. He stumbled. There was blood, and then silence. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean to kill him. And the pills? Bill asked quietly. He had tranquilizers. I poured them out. Thought it would look tidy like television. I wrapped the scissors so they wouldn't stain the seat. I didn't think. She stopped, trembling. Agatha watched her coolly. You thought vanity could disguise murder. It never does. Penelope gave a broken laugh. Coming from you, that's almost funny. Bill gestured to the constable. Take her back to her cell. As the door closed, Roy exhaled. Well, that's that. She's confessed, sobbed and smudged her eyeliner. Justice achieved, mascara ruined. Agatha stared at the empty chair. She's pathetic, not evil. You're going soft, said Bill. No, just older. He smiled faintly. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin your image. Outside, the morning had turned brilliant. Charles Frith's vintage convertible waited at the curb, gleaming smugly. He leaned against it, reading the Times and pretending indifference. Heard the news, he said. Well done, Aggie. Another corpse quaffed to closure. Don't start. I wouldn't dream. Merely offering lunch to the heroine. Heroine? Bill did the work. You provided the drama. He provided the forms. Between you, justice, and entertainment thrive. Roy slipped his sunglasses on. I second lunch, preferably somewhere with linen napkins and no moral lessons. You're both incorrigible, said Agatha. And hungry, said Charles. Hop in. They ate at the Swan in Broadway, the sort of place that charged extra for silence. The waiter hovered, the sunlight slanted through leaded panes, and Agatha, despite herself, began to unwind. So, said Charles, swirling his wine, you've unmasked another killer. How does it feel? Predictable. Everyone's guilty when vanity's involved. Including you, he teased. Especially me, he smiled. That's progress. Self-awareness at last. Don't spoil it, Roy raised his glass. To Agatha Raisin, the only woman who could make homicide a hair appointment. She snorted. I'll drink to that, but only because it's true. They clinked glasses. For a moment, laughter replaced tension. Then Charles said quietly, What about Lila? Still vanished? Gone, said Agatha. Bill thinks she took her journalist and her conscience to Spain, probably writing her memoirs, Shampoo, Scandal and Survival. And you? Asked Charles. What will you write? A cheque for gin, she said. He laughed. You're impossible. That's what keeps you interested. Debatable. Rubbish. Roy fluttered his napkin. Children, behave. Some of us are trying to eat. By late afternoon they returned to Carsley, where the drizzle had resumed out of habit. Mrs. Bloxby waited by the vicarage gate, umbrella tilted like a halo. I heard it's over, she said gently. More or less, said Agatha. You don't sound pleased. I'm not sure what I am. Mrs. Bloxby regarded her kindly. Closure seldom feels tidy. Real life rarely gives us neat endings. To tell that to Penelope, she arranged one. And now she'll pay for it. But I was thinking of you, dear. Agatha frowned. Me? You chase excitement, then resent it for tiring you. Perhaps peace simply bores you. Peace is overrated, Mrs. Blocksby smiled. So is hair colour. Have you considered going grey gracefully? Traitor, said Agatha. They both laughed. That evening the Red Lion was packed with villagers dissecting the scandal. Doris Simpson was in full reportorial mode, gesturing with her pint. They say she confessed straight out, no hesitation. Terrible thing, pride. I always say, if you must kill someone, at least don't do it in a salon. Far too many witnesses. Sound advice, murmured Charles. Roy, already on his second shandy, added, I'm drafting the article. From highlights to homicide, the inside story by Silver and Raisin. Over my dead body, said Agatha. That can be arranged, darling, strictly for circulation. Bill entered, rain-spattered and weary but smiling. You lot celebrating already? Merely toasting your paperwork, said Agatha. Then make it quick. I've got statements to sign. Anything new? Penelope's giving us names. The Evesham Trust crowd will be keeping solicitors busy for months. You've stirred a very expensive hornet's nest. You make it sound ungrateful. I'm not ungrateful, he said. Just bracing for the paperwork avalanche. Still, well done, Agatha. She looked startled. Compliments from Bill were rarer than sunshine in February. Thank you, she said gruffly. Try not to start another case before Monday, he added, and left. Monday's ages away, she muttered. Charles grinned. You're impossible. And you're predictable. Which is why we get along, she raised her glass. To futility and friendship. Roy clinked hers. And front-page features. Later at home, the house was quiet except for the soft hum of the boiler and Hodge's gentle breathing. The fire glowed low. The air smelled faintly of rain and victory. Agatha sat in her armchair, shoes off, glass of gin balanced on the armrest. She lit a cigarette, watched the smoke curl upward, and allowed herself the smallest smile. She'd solved another case, or half-solved it, depending on who was counting. Penelope's confession had closed the file, but the triumph felt oddly hollow. Sebastian's arrogance, Lila's lies, Penelope's vanity, all threads of the same fabric, and somewhere woven among them, her own. Hodge leapt into her lap, purring, his fur warm against her hands. You'd have liked Sebastian, she told him. Same opinion of humans. The cat blinked slowly, unimpressed. Yes, she said. You're wiser than I am. Everyone is. She looked at her reflection in the darkened window, the line of her jaw, the stubborn gleam in her eyes. Maybe I'll go grey after all, she murmured. It seems safer than curiosity. Outside, the drizzle thickened again, soft as sighs over slate roofs. Somewhere in the distance, the church bell chimed the hour, not quite solemn, not quite merry. Agatha stubbed out her cigarette, lifted her gin, and toasted the quiet. Here's to vanity, she said softly. The world would be unbearable without it. Hodge yawned, curled deeper into her lap, and began to purr again, the contented rhythm of a creature who understood that life, like hair, always grows back eventually. Carsley had a gift for forgetting. 1 week after Penelope Frith's confession, the village looked as though nothing unpleasant had ever disturbed its hedgerows. The drizzle returned on schedule. Gossip resumed its usual circuit between the post office and the vicarage, and only Agatha Raisin carried the faint scent of crime with her like an expensive perfume that refused to fade. The Salon in Evesham reopened under new management. No champagne this time, no secrets, only tea in paper cups, and a sign in the window reading, Reputation restored, walk-ins welcome. Agatha drove past once, slowing just enough to see the fresh paint. The sight gave her an odd mixture of triumph and anticlimax. It was rather like seeing one's ex at a funeral looking perfectly content. Back home, Hodge sprawled on the windowsill, tail flicking lazily at the rain. A letter lay on the hall table, the envelope stamped Mercester Police. She slit it open with a butter knife. Inside was a neat thank you note in Bill Wong's careful handwriting. For once, you were right before the paperwork was. Try not to be insufferable about it. She smiled. Too late, Bill. I was born insufferable. Roy Silver rang not long after. Darling, the magazine loved my pitch. They're calling it Curl Up and Die, How One Village Salon Turned Deadly. I took the liberty of listing us as co-investigators. You're as shameless as you are decorative, said Agatha. Flattery will get you everywhere. Now there's another story brewing. London banker, missing mistress, scandal galore. Perfect for you. Agatha looked at the drizzle tapping her window. After a trim, she said, and hung up. She wasn't ready to chase another corpse just yet. The thought surprised her. Usually victory left her restless. This time it left her tired. She poured a gin, lit a cigarette, and sat down beside Hodge. The smoke curled upward, soft as resignation. Mrs. Bloxby's invitation lay on the arm of the chair. Pale blue paper, careful script. Tea tomorrow, dear. I promise no sermons, only scones. Agatha could already hear the vicar's wife saying something maddeningly gentle about pride and vanity. Yet she'd go. She always did. Mrs. Bloxby had a way of making self-reproach sound almost flattering. Outside, a delivery van rattled past, splashing puddles against the garden wall. Somewhere, someone laughed. Life was resuming, annoyingly normal. Agatha studied her reflection in the darkened window. The glass showed a blurred version of herself, a streak of light hair, a smudge of smoke, eyes that had seen too much and still refused to blink. Older, yes. Sharper, too. There were fine lines she hadn't noticed before, though whether they came from age or exasperation she couldn't tell. Maybe I will go grey after all, she murmured. Would serve me right. Hodge yawned hugely, unimpressed. Don't look so smug. You'd shed on any colour. The cat settled deeper into her lap, purring in the self-satisfied way of creatures who've never doubted their own worth. Agatha envied him. Cats never worried about their reputations, or the years slipping by, or men with vintage convertibles who flirted only when bored. They simply were, selfish, elegant, and content. Perhaps that was the secret of serenity. She stubbed out her cigarette and reached for the gin again. The village clock struck 9, its tones soft and unhurried. Somewhere, Doris Simpson would be telling the Red Lion regulars that Mrs. Raisin had solved another murder, bless her heart, though it was mostly luck as usual. Roy would be writing press copy filled with adjectives he couldn't spell. Bill would be finishing paperwork he didn't want. Charles would be wondering, faintly, whether to ring her, and deciding not to. And Mrs. Bloxby, serene as ever, would be praying that Agatha might one day choose peace over peril. Agatha smiled to herself. Peace is dull, she told the cat, but perhaps I'll give it a trial run. The rain thickened, soft drumming on the roof. She leaned back, eyes half closed, letting the rhythm fill the room. For the first time in weeks, she felt still. The village could keep its gossip. The world could spin without her for an evening. Tomorrow would bring more nonsense. It always did. But tonight Carsley was quiet, and she was content enough to pretend that quiet suited her. She lifted her glass one final time. To vanity, she said softly, and to knowing when to laugh at it. Hodge purred louder, as if to agree. The fire sighed, the rain whispered, and Agatha Raisin, detective, romantic, incurable fool, watched her reflection fade into the window's dark sheen until only the glow of her cigarette remained.